welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us for another incredible show. And today we have an extra special guest. Today we have Stephen Sue. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show today. And for those of you that aren't aware of Stephen, he is an incredible coach, and he has his own business that you can probably see on the screen behind him, called Stephen Sue International. He's this amazing coach who helps people transform their lives, and he's worked for a number of years in this space. And actually before that was working as an accountant and a CPA. So I'm fascinated, Stephen, how did you go from what you were doing to your career and what you're doing now? And what was that journey like? And please share with people, how did you come to be an incredible coach today?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for having me on your amazing show, Michelle. Really good to be on here and share a bit of my journey with your audience, with your amazing audience. So look, let's go all the way back to my journey. You know, I was born and raised in Malaysia, right? And as a lot of Asians, as your audience will know, you know, it's either you become an accountant, engineer, doctors, and maybe, you know, some, you know, engineer, I mentioned that as well. So I was, you know, in the oil accounting line, and I got my degree in accounting in Melbourne, and that was back in 2001. Yeah, that I got my degree in accounting, right? And I fell in love with this place, this amazing country, and Melbourne as well, and I decided to stay on. I couldn't do anything else. The choices back then were, do I go back to Malaysia or do I stay on? If I stay on, I need to do something. And I took on the Masters of Accounting as well, just to stay on, right? And that was a very good experience there. And got my CPA qualification as well. And then once I finished my degree, and the next thing was, you know, going to work, right? And very amazing to join Deloitte as a financial audit, yeah, and which is really good. And it's a wonderful experience. And the reason why I'm saying it, and that was back in Malaysia, and a wonderful experience because it really pushes the resilience, the boundaries, right? And also the mindset of you, because look, when I was working there, I started at 8 o'clock and I finish when the work finishes, right? There's no set time, right? Sometimes it's like 6 o'clock, sometimes at 9 o'clock at night, sometimes it could be 2 o'clock in the morning, yeah. But it really builds up the resilience, and that really, it's a really cool skill set to have, you know, and that helps me really much as I moved back into Melbourne back in 2007. And I got married in 2006, and I moved back with my wife, Lily, and I got back to Melbourne in 2007. And I was, you know, I was in the charter world, and then I went into corporate, yeah. And it's I was in the corporate for a number of years, really, again, really good experience, worked my way up the structure, and into accounting, into financial management, into risk management as well, right? Looking at businesses in the company that I was in. And what happened back in 2016, right? Apologize. So what happened back in maybe I think it was back in 2015. I realized that I was, you know, I very quickly moved from an outperformer from my years in the corporate world into an outcast in a span of 6 months. Yeah, outperformer to an outcast in a span of 6 months. And when there's a huge, very fast transition, right, from an outperformer to an outcast, and that really takes toll to my mindset, to how I feel as well, right? And I know that at that time I was really unhappy, and what I didn't realize was that I was actually in depression. I was like, nah, can't be. I can't, you know, there's no way I'm in depression. I knew that I was unhappy, and I did a lot of work on myself to actually got myself out of that state of really massive unhappiness. And then once I got out of it, then I started to realize that, wow, it was actually, you know, depression that I just went through. And amazing thing was that, and one of the amazing things that came out from that experience was that Lily came into my room and mentioned something to me, which was just opens up a huge door, which was, and she came in and said, "Hey, Stephen, you went through a period of significant growth in your career, right? You're doing a lot of amazing work. You're doing a lot of coaching and mentoring to your teams in the last number of years, but you are unhappy. Why not do something that makes you happier? You got amazing skill set." Like, well, you're right, and that just opens up a door for me to step into what I'm doing right now, into my coaching business. Instead of working for someone, I'm working for myself and my family. I've got 3 really young, amazing kids. I work for them as well, right? And Lily as well. And that's how business started from there.
Wow, what a journey. And I really felt how heartfelt that was. Thank you so much for sharing that. What I'm sure many viewers can relate to around the social, the cultural kind of conditioning around this is, my career. You have, you put it so well, you can be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. That was your career path and your options. And how beautifully you shared that you did that, and you went up and you went up and you were successful and you grew and grew and grew. And then in 6 months you went to, outperformer to outcast. And I'm sure many people watching can actually relate to that in terms of what's happened within their own careers. And so beautifully that you now have different bosses. You have the 3 children and your wife Lily as your bosses.
Yep.
And as people to keep you accountable and keep you motivated and happy with your own business now, which is Stephen Sue International. So Stephen, with this incredible journey, and I think it's a very profound journey, because people watching will say, "Oh yeah, Stephen did it, so I can do that too." But before we go there, I'm sure they're also interested now, what does success mean to you today, to you as a person? What does success mean?
Really good question, Michelle. What does success means for me at this moment in time is to see my kids happy. Really seeing my kids happy, and what gives them the happiness is to have a wonderful experience. They are learning new things. They are reaching out and helping people out and changing their mindset, the way they approach their their friends at school, right? The way they come on stage to perform, because my kids are huge in calisthenics. So to see them come out of their shell and come on stage and perform and give their best, right? If they win, great. If they don't win, wonderful, right? It's about the journey to get there, the mindset, the experience, and the joy that they have, right? And that is what success means for me. And what drives that is all the work that us as a parent, like myself and Lily as a parent, to support that.
I really hear, especially with 3 young children, how that is such a great motivator, and that success for you is seeing, and kids do it so beautifully. They have that innate joy. It's not the winning or the losing, like you're pointing out. It's actually the journey. Kids are wonderful for having such being in the moment. They are great teachers about being in the moment and having that joy.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And so with the wonderful definition you have of success there, and your incredible background and awareness and moving out of what was making you unhappy into what makes you happy now, what would you say as some suggestions or tips for people about how they can also create that mindset for success?
I think what really helps me and my kids is be conscious of what you focus on. Yeah, be really take stock of what you focus on and what was the intention of that focus on. If you're focusing on, are you focusing on the positive side, or are you focusing on the negative side of things, right? If you focus on the negative side of things, guess what? You're always going to feel not as good, right? You're always going to feel a lot more negative. Yeah, when you start focusing on the positive side, the things that makes you optimistic, makes you happy, makes you joyful, then you start to say, wow, what a wonderful life that we have got, right? And it really impacts the way you think, the way you think, the way you see things, the way, and it comes through from your action as well. And that you can then start to influence on the people, on the people around you to get a bit of that good stuff, right? And the ripple effect is absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing.
I love how you say your most important, and one of your key tips is about being careful about what you focus on, because so much nowadays, even with what content people watch on TV or on social media or whatever, what you're feeding, in a sense, in terms of your everyday awareness and in terms of what your mind and your brain are taking in as information is so important. And I'm sure for yourself as a parent, being careful and being aware of what your children are looking at and what they're focusing on, whether it's, do you let your children watch the news, for example, because most of the news is quite negative?
Absolutely. I encourage them to watch news, right, of their choice. And then we do an unpack session in terms of what does that mean? What does the news mean? What do you see it? How do you feel? And what else can you feel better? So it's really important, number one, to be conscious of what we're feeding our mind, like what you said, Michelle, which is really, really amazing. What we feed our mind with, all the social medias, and we're so easily accessible. Once we have got that, we've got to be cautious in terms of what does that mean for us moving forward as well. And is it something that we can do to reframe the meaning? And that's what I do a lot with my kids, and I do not want to deprive them of information, of the journey of experience and their learning experience for them. Yeah. What we can do as a parent, myself and Lily does a lot, is to actually help them to, build a different meaning, a better meaning for them, whichever meaning that they choose to. So that helps them to be more independent, more stronger as a person, and then be more independent mentally and physically as well, in terms of handling challenges, right? I know that she's going to grow up, strong and healthy, and also she's going to face a lot of challenges, peer pressure and all. So, starting right now is amazing, because it actually equips them in terms of how can they deal with it, all the peer pressure, all the pressure that comes along, because I'm not going to be there the whole time right next to her, right? So I can be there during dinner time, lunchtime, on the weekend, but there's a huge portion that I'm not with my kids. And I want them to, and amazing that, they can be strong and defend for themselves as well and make the right decision, whatever that is.
What a wonderful, wonderful parent, and so much awareness that you're sharing and showing about, allowing the children to see the information. But then I loved how you're saying you then talk to them about unpacking it. So how does it make you feel? What does it mean to you? All of that sort of thing. I'm also interested then with, focusing on the positive and focusing on the negative in that kind of vein. What sorts of things do you do to help them to focus or to choose back to the positive is probably another way of thinking about it. So, kids, just like when coaching people, it's about encouraging them to grow themselves, like you're so beautifully sharing, so that they then start to make their own choices and choose back to focusing on the positive or looking for the positive. So how do you do that with, I'm interested in, how do you do that with your children? If they're faced with the positive and the negative, how do you encourage them to keep choosing back to the positive?
Yeah, really engage them by asking, some questions, and also being finding the right time to ask the questions as well. Sometimes they're going through a period of unhappiness or some challenges. They want to have a quiet time, then both myself and Lily will give them a quiet time to give them the space for them to digest what has happened, and then we can then come in and offer the support and being a friend of them, not as a parent, but more of a friend in terms of having a conversation. What can we do better to support them in their journey, right? And one thing that I mentioned to them just a couple of weeks ago, which I'm happy to share with your audience, right? I use this analogy of post-it notes. Right? We have got post-it notes, right? A red color post-it notes and a green color post-it notes. Yeah. So a lot of time that we, the red color post-it note is actually not a good one, right? The green color one will be a better one, right? To have red and green. So there's a lot of times where we say, oh, you know what? We do not want whatever is on the red color post-it notes. So we move away from it. But unconsciously, we are still focusing on the red color post-it notes. As we move away, we are still focusing on that. Yeah. What can be better is that to shift your focus to the whatever is on the green post-it notes and moving towards it. And that small little shifts makes a huge impact, because a lot of people, and my kids as well, and sometimes myself as well, this is a problem. I want to move away. I want to move away. But unconsciously, we are still focusing on the problem as we move away. Right? We need to shift our focus to what are we moving towards, the things that we want to achieve, and focus on that. And that really, it gives you a better emotion, right? It changes your emotion. It gives you more creativity. It gives you more happiness. It gives you more energy, right? It's like, oh, it's amazing, right? Because you're focusing on what you want to move towards, what you want to create, what you want to achieve, not the problem.
I love what you're saying, and my mind's just going bang, 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 because I'm thinking of all of the similar examples, especially to do with children, but it works with adults as well, because it's all about that languaging and the programming that you do and that you role model for others around, where to place that focus. And you so beautifully shared about how with the green and the red post-it notes, even if you tell somebody to focus on the green post-it note, they're still going to be, the energy is still tied to the red post-it note, because, that's even more dramatic, more exciting, more danger, more whatever. So it can be a little bit hard to let go of the red one to focus on the green one. But I'm reminded in terms of language about when, if you're seeing a child carrying a glass of water or a glass of milk, for example, and you say to the child, don't drop the glass. Now, what the child actually hears and what we hear, what people hear, is drop the glass. They don't hear the drop part, don't. They don't hear the don't part. So just like your red post-it notes, what they're hearing is drop the glass, drop the glass. So even their focus, and you can see, the child or the person's carrying, and they're focused on carrying the glass safely. What they're hearing or what their brain's rolling around in is drop the glass, drop the glass.
Yeah.
So if your language is hold that glass carefully, then what you've programmed into the child is hold the glass carefully. And so that language and those subtle keys that you would know as well as a coach, those subtle keys of how you use language to stay focused on those green post-it notes. I think you've used such a beautiful example that everybody can really relate to about the importance of feeding that green post-it note and the importance of language then, of how you phrase things and say things. And I'm sure with your children, it comes out when you're engaging them and talking about the meaning behind things. So the meaning, in that example of carrying the glass, it might be, carrying the iPhone or carrying this or carrying that.
100%, and absolutely well put, Michelle. And I couldn't agree more. The internal language, or the language that we use, really have a massive impact. And and I still do it, right, in these days, right? And it's about catching yourself and progressive improvement, and I did mention to my kids that, don't drop the glass. It's actually not a good way to help you not to drop the glass. Yeah. And actually verbalize to my kids so that they actually understand why am I saying it differently, and build them up as well, and helping them to become a better parent, right? And a better friend as well. And one of the things that I would love to share with your audience, if that's okay, Michelle, is that I also understand the preference of communication that we are engaging with, right? Now, I've got 2 young kids, and they have a very different personality. One is moving away, and one is moving towards. right? And a lot of times that, we mentioned that one thing, we have to say it in two different ways. One is moving away manner, and one is a moving towards manner. For example, going to the playground with my kids, many years ago, I would say, would you want to go to the playground with Zoe, so that you can avoid being unhealthy, right? Moving away, because she's a moving away person. And then she said, yep, I love it. Sky, on the other hand, she's a moving towards person. It's like, oh, Sky, would you love to go to the park so they can have more fun? Once we switch it around, then both of them will find it hard to understand. But when we understand, are they moving forward, or moving towards, or moving away, and inbuild that into the conversation, and it has massive transformation, and it's a lot more influential skill as well, to get what you want to get to.
I know we're using your beautiful children as an example here, but you raised a brilliant point there about the way of communicating or using that positive talk, and how it can still even, with even more beautiful subtlety that you're expressing there, be about how you're communicating and what motivates people. So is moving towards something, let's go have fun and let's go down the beach and, have lots of fun times, or moving away from, if you don't go down the beach, then you might, miss seeing your friends or getting fit or having fun in the sun while it's still summer, etc. So right. I really love the subtlety that you're showing and sharing. And the other point that you touched on briefly, but I really want to talk about as well, is that people being human, sometimes you get it wrong. And sharing then, what you're doing in the process that you're using with your children, so that they can, through your role modeling, also learn again that it's okay to get it wrong. You don't always get it right. But then this is where you've realized, and you've then started to change the language that they use so that they can then feel. And have you done that with your daughters or your children, when you've maybe got it wrong and then you've changed it and you've shown them? And did you ask them at the time, how did it feel with you using the different words?
Yeah, absolutely. And what does those words mean for them? And it's all about, a lot about meaning that we really practice in our household, because the meaning affects your emotion, right? And the emotion then affects your actions. So really unpack it, and and it really sets a tone in terms of, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to learn from it. And what's not okay is to ignore it, and what's not okay to sweep it under the carpet, right? And also giving them a class example that, Dad doesn't know everything, right? And I'm learning as much as they are learning as well at the same time, right? And the best thing is to come forward, ownership, right? Own up to whatever we have done, good and bad and all in between, and talk about it. What we can do better, what can we do differently, what we can do, that makes everyone happier. Yeah. And by changing the meaning. And look, yeah, we do have a lot of conversation on that front. Sometimes it goes really well. What, Dad, I get it, let's move on. Like, Dad, what are you talking about? Right? I do have that. And that's where, like, okay, cool, let's come back at another time, right? So got to be really intuitive, but it's not always hitting the mark in terms of the delivery, but it's always finding a new way to engage them differently, because they are growing so much quicker, right? Because they are growing, and they're picking up all the influences and information in their surrounding as well, which I'm not part of, right? Schools and everyone else. So got to be really flexible. We got to be really flexible.
And I love how we're talking about children, but all of this is obviously really applicable for if you're leading teams in a company, or if you're a leader, because it's a similar kinds of processes and really subtle art of, and I loved how you shared then, you don't always get it right. And it's also sometimes walking away if they're not being well, if they get it, then great, you kind of move on. But if they're not getting it, and then perhaps moving away, and I just kind of want to link back a little bit again to you, because what you're describing is showing a lot of self-awareness and a lot of self-journey and self-vulnerability. Do you think that as something for learning about creating that positive and that mindset for success, these are things that you've developed over time and you keep developing?
Yeah, it's always that I'm continuously learning and growing. Yeah, because yeah, the so what you learned 2 years ago and what I've learned throughout the last 2 years, for example, is always going to be the whole new level up. There's always a new, next level up. Yeah. It only stops when we decide to stop. And there's always a whole new level up. It's always development, continuously develop. And the moment that we decide that, all right, I'm not going to learn anymore, and that's where the danger comes in.
And I think that you raised a really good point there about, what you learnt 2 years ago will be different today, different in 2 years' time from now. And that when you stop learning and stop growing in that sense, it does, people might think it's harder work to keep learning and to keep growing, but it's actually harder work to not keep learning and not to keep growing. Even if you were to think about your mobile phone and the skills that you now need to use a phone that has a camera, this, that, and whatever on it, it's very different skills to what your phone was like, say, 5 years ago. And it'll be different again to what the phone is like in, say, another 5 years. So that continuous learning and growing, sometimes some of the people we work with, they kind of categorize it. I can't learn this at work because it's too much. We've been through too much, this, that, or whatever. And then you talk to them about the mobile phone or, the TV at home or whatever. And then they can kind of see, well, actually, we are learning, we are growing.
Yes.
And it's just that they have to kind of reframe it, which is what you talked about so beautifully at the beginning. And Stephen, if people did want to get hold of you and talk to you some more about your coaching, your parenting, even there may be parents out there, but I can see Freedom Mastery beautifully captured in that banner behind you. But what's the best way of people getting hold of you?
Yeah, thank you. The best way would be on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Type in my name on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find myself. Or if you're on Facebook, Central Connection on Facebook, and send me a message as well, saying that I've watched your interview with Michele. I really loved it. Love to connect, so that I know where the source is coming from, so I can personally accept it, right? Because we do get a few spammy ones these days. So yeah, I'm also very conscious what I feed, and in my community as well. So
yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful way of pointing out about people reaching out and connecting with you, whether it's through seeing you on the show like today or where we met, an optimist breakfast.
Yes.
That those connections are really quite important. And so otherwise, yes, the more spam that's coming out, the more people are just kind of ignoring it. And quickly then, if you were to give some advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
If I were to give myself, a younger self, an advice, what would that be? Wow. I'll give myself 2 advices. I'm greedy here, right? I'll give myself 2 advices. Number 1 is, have more fun. Have more fun. Be kinder to yourself. Have more fun. Right? You are in a learning journey. Really leverage the environment you're in and learn as much as you can. Right? And which leads up to the next advice I'm going to give myself is take more risk. Have more fun. Take more risk. Be kind to yourself. You learn something new, great. You're always going to learn something new, right? You find a way of doing things, you find a way not to do something as well. So either way, you're going to learn something out of it. So be kind to yourself and take more risk.
I really love that, and that whole, especially recognizing somebody that comes from your cultural background where your worldview was doctor, lawyer, or architect, or accountant. You had a very limited view of what your career path could be, and so I think that, you know, it's very true. Take more risks, be kinder to yourself, and have more fun. It's such a absolutely wonderful way to close for the show today. So thank you so much for being on the show, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
It's been such a pleasure. And to everybody watching, it's been, again, such an amazing show to have you join in and watch the fabulous Stephen sharing about his background, his journey, and the incredible tips that he's shared. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.